Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, scholars. Good evening, great leaders, intellectuals, the lovers of wisdom and lovers of knowledge. That's what philosophy means. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight for another powerful, informative, and very insightful leadership conversation that we're going to have. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We have been holding these sessions every Wednesdays since 2020, actually since August 2020. And every Wednesdays, great leaders from all walks of life, professionals converge and assemble together here online as we grapple with leadership and as we are empowered and inspired by great leaders every Wednesdays, and also conversing with powerful participants that we have. Tonight, we are going to have a wonderful conversation, and I'll be introducing our speaker shortly. But just to welcome our members, our regulars, thank you so much for tuning in, for joining us again. We are here every Wednesday. Last Wednesday we were here, and we were so inspired, and as always on Wednesdays. So thank you so much to our members. We always say that the aim of these sessions really is to empower each other. We are all leaders here. We're all coming from different disciplines and from different sectors. And really it's just to talk about leadership. So it's so this is a community of leaders. It's where leaders talking to other leaders. It's where we encourage each other. It's where we correct each other. It's where we admonish each other. It's where we learn, as we always say, that we come here to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn, because we always say that leadership, it's a journey. Leadership, it's not a destination. So if you want to be a great leader, you must always be prepared to develop yourself, to empower yourself, to learn until you go to the grave. The minute you stop developing yourself is when you become obsolete. That is why then really we take time. The people who come here, I always say I'm very humble that I host these powerful leaders that come here every Wednesdays. People I admire the most, people I respect so much, but they come here and then we learn from each other every Wednesdays. So thank you so much for joining us. And a particular welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. If you are here for the very first time, you are so welcome, and a special welcome to you. And we'd like you to relax, to enjoy this session, and please participate. Don't hold back. Don't be diffident. Don't be shy. Don't say no. It's my first time. I just want to hear others. No. We'd like to hear from you as well. There's a very good reason why you have joined us tonight, to hear from you and to learn from you as well. So thank you so much for joining us. We always say that these sessions are very contagious. You attend once, there is no way that you will not like to come back again, because you notice that that's where your peers are, and that's where you're really, it's a safe space for leaders. We discuss whatever we want to discuss. We are so free, as I'm saying, that there are so many things that happen to us as leaders that we really need to inspire and just to encourage each other. So thank you so much for joining us. As I'm saying, that we are here every Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So tonight, I'm going to introduce our speaker, and then she will address us Once she has finished her address, then we can start our conversation. We can do that by raising your hand or via chat room. So please feel free to make sure that you enjoy yourself and you participate as well, because as I'm saying, we really want to hear from you. Tonight, I'm so glad, I'm so honored that we am hosting my dear sister, my sister. I've been hunting for her. She will tell you that I've been hunting for her. And thank God that eventually I got her. She's a very busy person. Actually, I'm so humbled. I'm so honored that she availed herself in her busy schedule to talk to us tonight. More especially, if I can just say, Nyami, on behalf of Worldwide Institution and all of us, we just want to wish you or express our deepest condolences to you for your father who passed away. Was it 2 weeks ago, somewhere there, or a week or 2 weeks ago? We just want to say sorry for that. And thank you so much that even though you're still in that mood, in that process, but also you avail yourself, you know, so that's what soldiers do. So thank you so much, my sister. So Nyami is my sister, so please don't be jealous if I brag about her, because she's my sister, and I'm going to introduce her to you. And then as soon as I'm done introducing her, then she will take over. She will address us. Let me find. Obviously, Nyami, as you'll know, that she'll be having a very long CV. But if you don't mind, I'll just summarize for the sake of time. And then, she's a well-known leader, powerful leader in South Africa, and she has worked in different sectors. But Nyami is actually a professional quantity surveyor from the University of Natal, and worked for 2 of the listed construction companies for 4 years of her career. She then became a partner and executive chair of one of the largest professional quantity surveying firms in South Africa called LDM. She was there for 10 years, during which the firm grew to one of the influential players in the industry. She has also played various roles in the construction sector, amongst which she advised government on procurement reform and the introduction of private-public partnerships in South Africa. She was involved in groundbreaking public infrastructure projects like the Gautrain, Mangaung Prison, Maputo Corridor, Orlando Stadium, and OR Tambo Airport expansions. She has had extensive experience in infrastructure and property investments in several countries in the African continent. Nyami joined SSI Engineers and Environmental Consultants as CEO in December 2011, and championed the subsequent rebranding to Royal Haskoning DHV. She subsequently got appointed as Business Line Director for South and Eastern Africa as an addition to her portfolio. She served on the Global Executive Council of Royal Haskoning DHV NL, and shared a number of group subsidiary boards there. She did the Leadership Development Program with Arthur D. Dickey Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, that is in USA in 1995. Also, she did the Property Development Program with the University of Cape Town in 1998. She did a strategic agility executive program with London Business School in 2008. And also she did the private public partnership development course with IP3 Institute, which is in Washington, DC, in USA. Nyami has served on several corporate boards as non-executive director and served in leadership positions in a number of professional and business organizations. She is the recipient of the prestigious Women's Property Network 5-Star Award, which recognizes women leaders in the property sector. Nyami is one of very few professionals who have been involved in every aspect of the infrastructure and property investment and development value chain. You will agree with me that we are so honored, ladies and gentlemen, that we have this daughter of the soil, this sister of ours, this great leader addressing us tonight, inspiring us, encouraging us, empowering us. That is Nyami Mandindi. Sis Nyami, over to you, my sister. We are so eager to hear from you. Thank you, sis. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Mazwe. Good evening, all of you members and honored guests. I'm deeply honored also to be part of this conversation. My topic is leadership from the heart. And I'm going to raise a couple of almost provocative, hopefully, and controversial points. And I do hope that those will trigger a discussion amongst us. And also, you know, these conversations should be about change, doing something differently, doing something better. So I will start. First of all, before I start, I would like to make two disclaimer statements or statements. I chose the topic, and I chose the topic in a simplistic manner deliberately, because we could have chosen a topic that has commercially acceptable terms like emotionally intelligent, compassionate, transformational leadership, and all those big terms. But I just wanted us to take our eyes off the complexity of terminology and really deal with the root matter and what needs to be said, especially in this season. So I chose the heart so that the simplicity of the term draws us to the fundamentals, to the key basics, so that we're not wrapped up in terminology and we lose the essence and we lose the power in what needs to be changed or said at this moment. So if you will, perhaps forgive me for that simplicity, because sometimes, I mean, we're so married to big terms, especially in business lingo, big terms, and then it's a business school thing. Someone in the Boston or Harvard has come up with a new term, and we all must say that term to sound intelligent and sound relevant. So, I just want us to draw back to the basics, because we're missing a couple of steps and we might need to retrace our way so that as we move forward, we're moving forward on a solid footing. And I would like to challenge us to process leadership, not only in terms of the super educated, so-called super qualified, but also in terms of leadership in as far as it is critical in the foundational structures of society, be it family or communities. So the terminology and the languaging that we need to put in leadership has to ensure that we reach, the message reaches the targeted audience, rather than being too bombastic and too high level, that people who are basically serving in leadership positions but are not in educated or academic institutions or academic settings are able to grapple with the terms and grapple with the fundamental issues that are needing to be dealt with. The second disclaimer or statement I would like to make is the fact that we're talking about the heart of leadership doesn't preclude or exclude the other essential components of leadership. Therefore, we still, although we're not going to cover it in this topic, we're still cognizant of the need for vision casting, for instance, which are essential components of leadership. We're still cognizant of setting and evaluating goals and goal achievement. We're still cognizant of clear communication and inspiring confidence of both internal teams and stakeholders. But today we just needed to refocus, to focus on the heart topic. So if you don't hear those other aspects of leadership, please don't walk away with a feeling that we were missing something. It's just that it gets broad and we needed to just zoom into particular detail. So having cleared those housekeeping matters, I would like to delve into what, for me, leadership from the heart meant. I will perhaps, before I go to my own definition, share what Richard Reckie, I think he's from KPMG. He says leadership, leading from the heart, means leading from the place of engaging with your purpose, taking responsibility for your actions, and learning how to trust your heartfelt instincts in times of trouble. And I found that quite sufficient and quite profound, in fact. So for me, though, in the context that we're in, leading from the heart has to do with that purposefulness. Purposefulness not only of the leader, but also of the organization or entity being led. And therefore mixing up that purposefulness into a deep conviction in the reason for existence and the contribution of the entity to general society. And also it has to do with being interested in and committed to serving people in a way that enhances their lives and opportunities. So the heart, for me, produces the will to do the right thing and to do the right things right, to be effective in delivering the results and also being accountable. Accountability not only to outside parties, but accountability to self first, you know, and we hardly look at accountability in the way where I look in the mirror and account to myself to start off with, before I can account to the world. So the key attributes of the leadership from the heart that I pointed out, I'm not gonna share for a long time so that we can have enough time to engage some of the ideas that are coming through. The key attributes of the leadership from the heart are the keen interest. That's the first one, the keen interest to properly define and unpack challenges. The heart wants to get to the bottom of the issue. And that's where that purposefulness and the commitment to resolve issues comes from, the commitment to move the thing forward and make something better than what we found it. So borrowing from one of the statements, I can't remember who said it, is a problem clearly stated, is a problem half solved, even more essential than its solution. So I like that definition because it gets to the bottom of what I'm seeking to communicate here about this attribute of leadership from the heart. Sometimes we jump into conclusions before we've actually defined what the problem is. I remember when my kids were still small, you know, the many of them, they would come in a room and maybe you want to send them to the kitchen to grab something. So I would say, can you please bring? And then they quickly run out because each one wants to be the first one to get to the object I'm sending them to. But the issue is they don't know what I'm sending them to, so they will catch each other, and then they get to the kitchen, they're looking at each other, what is it? What is it? And then they have to come back to me and say, what was it that we're supposed to get, by the way? And then, so it doesn't, it becomes irrelevant that someone was the first to the solution because you solved something you were not supposed to solve anyway. The direction was totally wrong. So this issue of wanting to get to the bottom of the issue is very important. I like what Albert Einstein says, and I'll quote him. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. I'll say that again because I need for it to sink a bit in all of us. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. And for me, this is very important, especially in the context of our country, because what we've just dealt with is wisdom. That's wisdom, because we don't spend enough time refining and defining our challenges properly. We take a few days, a few men, mega minds, big corporate giants, and everybody else, ministers, they go out somewhere, spend 3 days, a weekend, and most of the time they're socializing anyway. And then they come back and say, we know the bottom of the issues of our country. And we haven't engaged the matters in the level of depth and the level of intensity and bringing in the different perspectives, diverse perspectives into the challenge. So for me, when you have a heart for a matter and you have a heart that wants to see the matter changed, the first part is to be able to define what it is that needs to be done, what it is that needs to be changed, what it is that needs to be solved. So I really would want to put across in this forum that maybe as a nation, we need to go back to conversations. We've lost the art and the skill of inquiry, where you inquire and bounce a challenge until we come up with the clear definition. And then once the clear definition, once we know we're dealing with a cat or a lion, then we know what to do. We know the direction to take. So I would really like us to challenge us to take different perspectives, to be willing and have the courage to confront the difficult and uncomfortable questions until we get to the bottom of the issues of our nation. If we do the same patchwork that we've been busy with for the long time, then we're not going to resolve the challenges that are confronting, the leadership challenges that are confronting our nation. I was looking around in one presentation by some economic people, and they were saying they listed a number of top challenges facing South Africa today. And I'll just probably go through about 6. And then they said economic reconstruction and recovery in that order. I don't know if it was a pecking order or it was just a matter of how they listed them. And then the second one was job creation. Third one, rural development, fighting crime, gender-based violence, land reform, and then corruption as usual. So if you look at these challenges and you explore them and begin to tear them apart and begin to look at the genesis of the challenge, you're going to find that what we're dealing with is really just a manifestation of the core problem confronting our nation, or problems confronting our nation. So we need to get to a place where we can be quiet, and leadership from the heart has that ability and attribute of the willingness to take a step back, good listening skills, good listening abilities, and not jumping to conclusions, and just tease a problem, unpack it, look at, listen to others' perspectives and approaches to the issue until we are able to be comfortable that we understand what we're dealing with. At the moment, we continue to plaster the broken walls, but a more sustainable solution might be to break down the walls actually, so that we can rebuild afresh, preparing the base, the ground, laying strong earthquake-proof foundations, and then recompacting the soil thoroughly so that we can raise walls that generations will use, rather than plastering walls that are crumbling before our eyes, even before our generation is over. So that's a big challenge. And I think we need a different breed of leadership that's able to take those bold steps, because crushing something that exists, I'm not saying it from a destructive point of view. I'm saying it from a rebuilding and a future building point of view. So I believe that if we were to be courageous enough, to be bold enough to confront some of the most difficult challenges in our nation at the moment, then we would be able to build a very strong nation, that our children will have something that they inherit, a legacy that they inherit and take forward. So that's a very big issue for me. So I'm leaving it with you. Then we can converse about that in more detail later. The second aspect and attribute with this heart of leadership from the heart, it's skilled, qualified, competent, but not all-knowing. And that's a very important rider. Skilled, qualified, competent, but not all-knowing. You know, it takes humility to acknowledge that we do not know, because the culture that we've been raised in, we've been trained in, is a mega mind phenomenon culture, where that phenomenon of knowing everything is celebrated and highly rewarded. So once you show up as a leader and you say, actually, this is complex, I've never confronted anything like this. And then there are terms in leadership circles that a leader needs to know to show confidence, show leadership, you know, all those things are right, but also you need to show humanity, in the sense that we will not know everything we don't know. And especially now, there's a lot of complexity, not only in business, there's complexity in government, conflicting objectives, conflicting agendas. And therefore, leadership has become a very complex issue where you have to trade and balance out diverse interests, and also be able to get a balance with regards to how do you bring unity in the face of differences and diversity. So humility is going to be a very big key in how we move forward, because some of the things that we're confronting all over the world, I'm not just talking in the South African context, by the way, all over the world, I mean, in our generation, we've never had a pandemic, and that's a big event. But somehow there were mega minds who already knew what to do the following day. And I admire them, because some people are gifted with a fast thought. But all I'm saying is sometimes it's okay to step back and engage the bigger whole and ensure that we get a broader and a more balanced perspective to challenges. So with leadership with the heart is not arrogant, not dogmatic. It's not about my word against everybody else. It's ensuring that there's a bigger pool of ideas, the collective and the power in the collective wisdom. So it's more committed to positive results than merit to ideology, personalities, and groupings. So some of the things we need to resolve, we can't be married to ideology. We have to look at the best possible solution for the particular issue and then deal with that. So the ownership of the solution, so much as it doesn't have to rest with one individual, but rest with the collective. And sometimes, and I've certainly found in my leadership journey as well, sometimes the solution doesn't even come from the senior people, it comes from the floor. So if we do not train ourselves and develop the level of respect and humility that's able to listen to ordinary people that we work with or we engage with, then some of the solutions are missed in the process. And also the humility to go back to the drawing board and find sustainable solutions if some of the things are not resolved the way we thought they will be resolved. I mean, you look at some of the policies in our country that we had hoped would resolve something. For instance, BEE, a combination of BEE and the employment equity legislations. I mean, we are now how much, 26 years down the line? And that gap has not been closed. If anything, something funny is happening because it's widening. There are less women in leadership positions in corporates and in government than we had about 10 years ago. There are less Black people leading listed entities. There are less Black CEOs. So you ask yourself, with such beautiful legislation, what are we not getting right? And those are the difficult conversations we need to have. What are we missing? And take responsibility for what we're missing. It may not be about the white people not doing what they're supposed to do. It may be that actually we missed the point with regards to how we've structured legislation and how we've managed that legislation. So there's a number of things, but it only happens if we sit down, listen to each other, analyze where we are at, and really critically evaluate where we should be versus where we are, and then what are the next steps that could produce the desired results. The last aspect that I wanted to share around the attributes is the issue of accountability and taking responsibility for actions. And that accountability, as I indicated earlier, starts with self. Sometimes I get deeply sad when senior people and certainly leaders across the board stand on public platforms and they state that, oh, South Africa has the highest Gini coefficient. And we state this with so much pomp and ceremony as if we've just said something super intelligent. And we are on complete autopilot that maybe our behaviors, maybe the way we approach certain leadership positions is actually enabling that inequality in our country. So we accept zero responsibility and consciousness to our contributions in our day-to-day decisions and actions and the power we have to change that scenario. So we state it like it's an unresolvable problem. For instance, if we were interested in Gini coefficient, why are we promoting the pay gap within the corporates? Why is the pay gap not being a challenged matter? We continue to be comfortable to year on year give the CEO another $1 million in their remuneration And then the conversation about another 100 rand for the ordinary workers is a very uncomfortable and impossible conversation. And then we talk about Gini coefficients. So I think we need to just evaluate ourselves. Where are our hearts at? Are we really willing to resolve some of the things that are happening in our country, some of the challenges that we make insurmountable mountains? Imagine the possibilities in our nation, particularly if we could lead from the heart. Our nation is blessed by God and deeply endowed with talent. I've never seen such talented and gifted people like South Africans. I mean, even now, if we were to look positively at our environment, Mazwe, not so long ago, we were excluded from economic activities. We were excluded from leadership. We were excluded from any possibilities of ever playing on a global stage. Having said that, but look at the number of Black South Africans, both the ones who are doing publicly and being visible, and ordinary South Africans. And you go to Netherlands, you bump into South Africans. Oh, I'm working for that corporate and that corporate, and across the world, all over. And I get amazed at highly talented people that we are. And you know, I like that statement that says, the place of your greatest challenge could easily be the place of your greatest victory. And in South Africa, our biggest challenge has been people. And it may be that it is the place of our greatest victory as a nation. If we were to focus on people, people development, empowering people, ensuring that we bring a highly developed workforce, people across the board, our communities, then we could be a great nation. We are already a great nation. And I believe that when we look at the leadership question, we need to not to disregard, but to begin to look more at the human element, because the financial element that we're so obsessed about will actually be a byproduct of highly skilled, world-class people. So at the core of our nation's challenges is the skewed development legacy, human development based on a contention for resources. We know our history and we know how we got into that skewed development legacy. Maybe that's where we should begin to correct the foundation and make sure that we've got highly skilled and highly developed people who have a heart for the nation, a heart for our communities, a heart for the future of South Africa, and a heart for our nation, actually, that patriotism, and we engender that attitude across the board. So if we could just begin to engage our hearts, that's all my challenge is today. There's a lot of great legislation, a lot of great entities and approaches and achievements, but we're not doing it from a good heart. We're not doing it from a place where we're wanting to engage the bigger whole. I mean, we should be uncomfortable as leaders, both in this platform and broadly, if we've got more than 10 million young people in our country who are not engaged in any economic activity, and we're all just comfortable to continue just like that, as if nothing has happened. So that's the future that we are neglecting to deal with today. In conclusion, and I would like to just draw on the things I believe we could be doing differently. And also I'm referencing on the top challenges that, that are stated, which I believe needs to be, we need more conversations, more inquiry going into those top challenges so that we can solve the right things that need to be solved that will make a huge difference and move the mark forward. So one of the things we could do differently is consider the challenges that we face as a nation, consider the challenges that we face as humanity. And if you look at leadership training and development across the world, very few programs begin to equip our young people and leaders with skills that enable them to tap into their heart. You know, it is our former president, Mandela, who mentioned something about the heart-mind connection, because once you get that journey to the heart, then your mind engages differently. And very few programs manage to introduce concepts like that to leaders. So we get these super intelligent leaders who are leading from the head only. And yet humanity is sinking into deeper levels of despair and degradation because we have not engaged the heart. So I would like to see a lot more education programs or integrated education that begins to touch the hearts of particularly young people, of course, because those are the future leaders. But even at our level, where we begin to focus our leadership in a balanced manner, instead of doing another finance or number crunching or, you know, whatever those development areas that we focus on, but we also begin to develop from inside, because leadership from the heart draws from the inside, draws solution from the inside, and not only depends on the toolkit that we have provided for us by education. So I would like to challenge that. The second issue I think needs to be done differently is evaluating and revisiting our matrices and criteria for leadership measures. Because, I mean, you know how these things get framed, even in the corporate place, where a leader, oh, so-and-so is a decisive leader. And that's usually the leader who's a bully by right, someone who tramples others, who doesn't develop and raise and encourage a voice. So everybody is muted and they're the only voice and predominant opinion in the room. So we need to revisit how we measure and how we celebrate leadership, so that those leaders who are leading from the heart and beginning to do things that encompass the bigger whole and impact a broader pool of people for the better are then recognized and understood, because in most leadership environments, those leaders who are more encompassing are viewed and interpreted as weak and indecisive and less clear about direction and all those areas. So we need to really just rethink about, what do we celebrate? What do we reward? I mean, I remember in some of the corporate experiences, you would find some of those leaders who crush people totally. And incidentally, their numbers are great. So from a profitability contribution to the bottom line and all those matrices, they're doing extremely well, but they leave a whole lot of wounded people destroyed and totally paralyzed in their midst. So shouldn't we be dealing with those areas as well as we measure the performance and also the contribution of people in organization? Because what's the point of having one mega performer and 49 dead casualties? We could be having 50 marginal or average performers, or, you know, just right, 2.5, middle of the range, not shooting any lights out. And then you find you would have a much more sustainable organization going forward, and then introduce improvement measures to ensure that those performers, those individuals are super performers. So I think it's important that we look at those measures deeply and just evaluate how we do things. The last part I needed to challenge us on is really just getting out of conformity. We've become global copycat, this global copycat mentality. The UK is doing it, therefore we must do it. The US is doing it. There's a place for benchmarking. There's a place for setting standards. But there's also a place for talking new ideas, new directions, relevant paradigms, because we're looking elsewhere for solutions. So we just have to get out of that and get out of the inferiority complex that something we do is not good enough. Therefore, we have to get a validation from international markets. We have to just learn to be confident and trust ourselves with the solutions that we have, with the passion that we have to resolve the issues of our nation, so that we're able to define and to structure, to craft solutions that are uniquely South African and relevant to our environment. So I would really like to challenge us to get out of that mentality. I mean, it's ridiculous. We so like imported things. We saw this in China. Therefore, it's something we must implement in South Africa. The dynamic is totally different. The conditions in which we operate are completely different. And we keep on forcing these issues and these ideologies on ourselves, even when we see we're not getting the desired results. I'm not crushing being international and being global and looking at and learning from others. There's a place for that, but copycatting is definitely a no-no. So we have to be comfortable with stepping into our destiny as a nation. And I think a big example for me of a place where we missed an opportunity to engage into a very uncomfortable conversation in our nation because we have to appease and please everyone. Not so long ago, the former Chief Justice had that infamous or famous interview with the Israeli people around racism. And now, instead of dealing with the fundamental issue, because racism is one of those challenges in our country that is a stumbling block to our greatness. It really is holding us back because we can't see the collective power, the collective strength that are coming from the different races and the different areas of our nation. And therefore we're missing out on that on that collective dynamism that we could have as a nation. So we missed that opportunity because we got diverted and we got distracted. I'm not talking about don't worry about the legalities or where you stand with regards to the conversation or whatever was said or not said. What I'm dealing with is the question at hand was the issue of dealing with racism in our country. And we lost an opportunity of talking about racism at a time when there was no racial or incidents that was going to create the negative emotion. So I think we need to be able to engage these big stumbling blocks as we go forward and deal with the monsters in the room, the monsters that are holding our nation back. So I think I'll stop at that point. I've got a couple of things that I would have wanted to say, but maybe those will come in the conversation. I don't want to leave too little time for the discussion. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Sisi Nyami. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. That is why we are here as leaders. I did say earlier on, we are here to learn. We are here to for encouragement. We are here to admonish each other, to correct each other, because as we are saying that this omniscient syndrome, the all-knowing, that people know everything. At times, you've got to be humble as a leader, as a person, even as a scholar or an academic, that there are certain things you do not know. That is very, very important. And I like what you say, that we need to begin to find a way, how do we measure the effectiveness of leadership? Is a person who's bully, who's a monster? I see very good comments there. Brother Johannes Luhuko calls this a bull, is the bulldozer leader. And then Sisinta Tanta Sofubu called it a bully leader. So we've got these leaders, they may be bringing money, they may be making things happen, but at the expense of other people crying. So how do we become effective leaders? Do we become effective leaders? As you are saying, that at times these leaders, they are called decisive. These are strong, decisive leaders when people are crying on the other hand. So thank you so much, my sister. Ladies and gentlemen, we may now engage Sisi Nyami and engage each other as well in a conversation. We'll do that by raising your hands, and please do that while we still have time, because towards the end, that's where we see the traffic, people wanting to say things. I always say, because there are those ones, even in meetings everywhere, people who just want to wait first and listen to others. Towards the end, when we are saying, now we are about to close, and then we see people wanting to say things. So please do take an opportunity. You can raise your hand, or you can obviously use, you can use the platform there in the chat room. I see a hand there from Dr. Bongani Nkala, but before we can get to Dr. Bongani Nkala, I'd really like to, I don't know if, Johannes, are you able to express yourself? Because I really want to hear your views there with this bulldozer leader. And also, Tantaswa, I don't know if you are able to also to speak to wherever you are. I can take you, and then we'll go to Dr. Bongani. Johannes, if you're okay, but it's fine, we'll read your comment if you want us to do that. And then Johannes first will be followed by Sis Tanta Fubu. That's my great sister. And then we'll be followed by the hand there from Dr. Nkala. Johannes? We continue, Sis Tanta.
Thank you, Prof. Sis Nyami, thank you very much for the insightful presentation and agitation. Prof, what I was raising is, to Sis Nyami's point, we tend to believe from corporate that they're bringing in the money, and therefore we let them, do whatever they want to do with the souls that they are leading. And we believe that that's the best that we can be, and that's the best that we can get. What I believe we are missing, Sis Nyami, and I'd like to hear your view. What we are missing is, if you've got someone who has a team, let's say of 5 people, they're super star according to the only ones performing in their team. Firstly, to me, there's something really not right when you have this most senior person being the high performing person and everyone else, that they are leading, not performing. It just tells you that there's a problem there. Secondly, we hold ourselves back as corporates because we're so beholden to this person, and we pandit whatever they say and they need, and we jump. Yet, if we allowed the team that they lead to, to get to their best and to be the best that they could be and that they can be, you probably could far exceed what this one person is bringing in for that corporate. Yeah. We don't see that. And what is it that we should do, can do to get to that point? And part of us not seeing it, I think, is what you said, because that person has just been hearing his own voice. No one else has been talking, because everyone has been beaten to submission. So even in terms of innovation, we're not innovating at the pace and level that we should be innovating, because we've got someone who just is a bully, and at best they're bullies, at worst I believe that they're narcissists. So how do we do that? Thanks, Prof.
Thanks, sis. Tantwa. I'll take. So we'll take Dr. Bongani Nkala. He'll be followed by Dr. Siphe Potelwa, and then we'll go back to our speaker. We'll take another round after that. Dr. Bongani, leadership.
Thanks, Prof, for acknowledging me. I think I wanted also to really say thank you to our guest for wonderful enlightenment. For me, it really is not a question. I'm glad what you're reminding us as leaders, that we really need leaders that lead from that are conscious leaders who are not who does not destroy other people in the process of leadership. I think the previous speaker right now raised a very critical point, that you find people who are sitting in the top management level, while they're not moving with their key people that's supposed to assist them in reaching a particular target. They are bullying, in a sense that they want their work to be done at a particular, at all costs, without understanding where their leader, where the people that are leading are situated, in terms of whether they are sitting in the same platform or wavelength with them. They just want to ensure that they deliver those results irrespective of the well-being of the staff that they're leading. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Doc. We'll take Dr. Siphe Potelwa.
Thank you very much, Doc. Prof, I'm not sure if I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, colleagues. Thank you very much, Sis Nyami. Your presentation is very profound to me. It's very insightful. Thank you very much. And it reminds me of the book I read of Apostolic Paul. Says, go to the land where the slave become a king. What the slave did, he consumed for himself or herself, and then forget about the rest. And then I ask myself, does that a slave a leader in heart? And two, practically, it's my question now, from your practical observation, do you think in a democracy in South Africa in particular, do we have ethical leaders in heart? To substantiate or to further on that question without wasting time, Prof, do we have a leaders in heart that does have a vision of pace setting? Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Sis Nyami.
Thank you. Thanks, colleagues. Now we'll allow Sis Nyami to respond. Then after that, we'll take another round of questions, please. Sis Nyami, over to you, my sister.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Prof. Thanks all for your contributions. Dante, lovely bumping into you in the Zoom street. I think the question you and Dr. Bongani have raised is really, for me, how you deal with that in a corporate environment, in a work environment, is to flip the question. There's something I did when I was a young professional at Marion Roberts. And I had a little book which was called The Price of Non-Conformance. We called it PONC. And that book, what it did is to not calculate what we received, is to calculate what we lost as a result of certain behaviors and certain attitudes. And I find that if we start flipping the narrative around these behaviors and around these bully superstar behaviors in the workplace, then it will begin to awaken the conversation and change how we frame the whole situation. So I would say maybe start flipping it around. If we had 5 alive team members operating and doing what they're supposed to be doing without this one superstar silencing the whole lot and muting their voices, what would have been the gain to the company? What would have been the net impact in the organization? I mean, if you look also flipping within the context of the South African economy, I sometimes ask myself, what if we did not squander our opportunity? Let's say we set it at 94. Let's forget about what had happened before for a moment. What if we had taken a different attitude and a different approach in 94 and decided that those young Black professionals who were on the periphery of the economy, those experienced white people who were good-hearted but white, you know, we've got good people in our country irrespective of the color, and we had embraced and brought them into the mainstream in terms of how we build our nation forward. Don't you think after so long, our economy, instead of being a R1 trillion economy, for instance, we would be sitting at 10 trillion because of the collective benefit and the collective wisdom that is building into the economy? So for me, when we start flipping the question, we don't want to talk about 2 more Black faces there and there. What if we had made different decisions at that point? I mean, sometimes when I look at the question of our nation and really just think back about what had happened and equate it to the complexity of mergers and acquisitions, those who are involved in the mergers and acquisition space will probably relate, because according to global research, it's not only in South Africa, the research globally, 80% of mergers and acquisitions fail. And now, in that context, if we were to transpose that statistic and look at South Africa as I mean, it was a massive merger and acquisition exercise, because you had Ciskei, Transkei, the Western Cape border, Transvaal, Eastern Transvaal. What was it? Western Transvaal, I don't know if there was something like that. Orange Free State, Venda, you know, all those people. I mean, all those groupings. And not only that, and then the state-owned entities that were forced to amalgamate and to merge. So, and then you take that complexity, which would have evaded the most experienced leaders, the most experienced professionals, and then you take it and give it and trust it into the stewardship of people who are still trying to readjust and deal with the change and deal with settling into normal life. So what befell South Africa is a major complex issue. I know sometimes we evaluate the performance of the politicians in an unkind manner. But when you begin to look at it from that point of view, that this was complex to start off with, forget about the other shenanigans that have happened in the meantime, but it was a complex exercise. So when we look at these matters, we need to flip them differently so that we can see the opportunity base and how to respond going forward. So I would say, Dante, you can just take notes from those examples, for instance, and begin to engender and really inculcate a culture of inclusivity, a culture of raising each other up rather than dominating each other, which is prevalent in organization in the corporates this day. And Dr. Sipe, thank you so much for your comments. And the question I picked up is around ethical leaders. There's a lot of ethical leaders in our country. As I said, we are a blessed nation. We are a highly endowed nation when it comes to human capital. We just haven't learned the skill of capturing and really developing that human capital in a way that adds value. So there's a lot of ethical leaders in our country who are not recognized, who are unseen, who are somewhere there because it's not fashionable to be ethical. It's not fashionable to lead from the heart. So you find then the people who become more visible are the so-called bullies. So I think we've got enough capacity. And I think also, if you can look at that statistic, I think it's Zook who says for any system to change, you need about 12 to 15%, something like that, of the change within the system. So I think we don't need the whole of the nation changed, but we need a critical mass of leaders who can lead in these areas and begin to set a precedence and really set the tone around ethical leadership and this conscientious, caring leadership. Thank you. I hope I've covered all the questions. Yeah, I think so.
Yes, you have, Sis Nyami, powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, it just says that you don't need the whole nation, but you just need those ones who are focused, who can drive the change, and then it will happen. Thank you. I see Dr. Patricia Isabai, she's speaking about humanistic principles to leadership, and Dr. Mvusi Songelo speaking about is it organic leadership. Ladies, would you like to expand on those ones if you want to express yourself so that we can hear from you? Dr. Patricia, would you like to express yourself, and then we'll be followed by Dr. Songelo. And I see other comments there, and then I would like to rope in people in this platform. They know, fortunately, they're all members here. They know how we do things. Dr. Songelo will be followed by Siswe Zikoza, and Siswe Zikoza will be followed by my sister, the Opatiswa. In that order, please do, if you can just express yourself. I would like to hear from you and to learn from you. Patricia first, Dr. Patricia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. I don't have much to say. I was just agreeing with our esteemed presenter that indeed this is an emerging, these are emerging principles that are kind of crowding the leadership agenda. And I've studied a bit of female leadership, for example, and this is an area that is covered by the female leaders that I have had the opportunities to research among. So indeed, I agree with her that this, and it is a successful mode of leadership. And indeed, I agree that yes, it's the way to go. And it also echoes the Ubuntu leadership principles, which we have been talking about for quite some time. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks, my sister. Thank you, Dr. Mvusi Songelwa, and will be followed by Usiswezi, and Usiswezi will be followed by Sis Patiswa Mahupeni. Sis Mvusi.
Thank you very much, Prof, and good evening to colleagues. Even myself, Prof, I don't have any question other than to really congratulate Nyami for these insights. In fact, what I am really confirming and excited about is really her putting forward the fact that we do not have to copycat the others. There is space for leadership from whoever, whether you black or white or you Asian or you Chinese, and that emerges from the who we are as communities, as societies. And I think what is really missing is the fact that we don't come forth. And I think even as academics, we tend to really sabotage this kind of leadership that he's talking to, because we are influenced by the Western world. And I think what I am hearing from what she's actually saying is that we need to flip the flop. I've made my own little term here, is that we tend to just think what is good comes from elsewhere. And we can see that's evident. Even Prof, you might find that you get an award from somewhere else before you are celebrated at home, because other people from the West or from abroad, they actually really realize either the authenticity and innovation, which is adding value to what currently exists. And then we wake up to say, oh, Prof. Mazwe Majola has been celebrated elsewhere, and then we embrace you. So really, I'm actually really congratulating Nyami for giving us this insight. Thank you, sis.
Thank you. Thanks. And really, she speaks about global copycats. I mean, really, as she's saying, that it's good to benchmark, it's good to learn from international, from other places, but we must start our own things, let other nations follow us. And that was powerful. Thanks. I can see hands are coming now. Let me quickly go to my sister there, Siswezi. Siswezi will be followed by Sis Patiswa. Mahupeni and Sis Patiswa will be followed by Sis Hlengiwe Radebe. Then we'll go back to the hands there. I can see Dr. Sfiso Ngobo there, Mazwe Mandindi, and Tanti as well wants to come back. But in that order, please, Usiswezi first, followed by Patiswa, and then by Uhlengiwe in that order, please. Wezi? Is Wezi still with us?
I think she was, sorry, Prof. I think she was saying she is jumping off. So probably.
Oh, you see, now that's why I need to thank you all the time by my side. Thanks, my sister. Thank you so much. I was just making a comment. Okay. Sis Patiswa, are you still with us?
Yes, Dr. Majola, I'm still with you, Prof.
Oh, go ahead, my sister. Go ahead, sis.
Yes, mine, while it is a comment, what I actually wanted to, in fact, I was agreeing with Tanti on the points that she had raised, but in the main, it was around the bullies. But what I am actually pointing out is the challenge with leaders struggling to manage the paradox between humility and confidence, because you need both as a leader. You need to be humble for people to be able to be receptive of any kind of guidance that you give, and such that you also appear inclusive in the way you do things. But you also need confidence for believability and trust by the teams that you lead. I think the struggle is when you have to dial up or dial down, one of the two. And I think this is where most people are struggling. And I'm not sure how that needs to be managed, because one of the things that have come through with authentic leadership, or the concept of authenticity in leadership, we still have not dealt with authenticity in what context and to what end, because you hear people who will say, this is just who I am. And they are authentic in that sense because they are presenting themselves. But in that manner, it could be that this is not the kind of leadership that we want, while you present yourself as who you are in your authentic self. But that could be detrimental to the organization. So at what point do you dial up or dial down? And whose responsibility is that? Because we expect leaders to be self-aware, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And my point was to what Tandaswa was saying. Thanks, Prof.
Thanks, sis. Patricia. Thank you very much. We'll take Hlengiwe, and then we'll go back to Usisi Nyami, and then we'll come back to the colleagues that I've acknowledged. I can see their hands up. Sis Hlengiwe.
Thank you, Prof. I'm glad I followed Usisi Patricia, because it's exactly that point I was also. My question is really around that, is that, how do you, some of these leaders are authentically being themselves, and it's what they believe. They believe their methods are right and efficient. So how does one, we've had colleagues like that. You have, in some cases, we've had leaders who are like that, and you can see that their heart is actually in the right place, but the method is actually doing more harm than good. And so how do we help them, hold that mirror up to them, especially if those leaders, they mainly believe what they are doing is right, and they only hear their voice louder than anyone else's voice because they always believe they are right. So yeah, maybe it's not a question I know how to answer, or maybe we can answer, but it's just it's something that goes through my mind, is that how do we do that? How do we, who's accountable, or who's responsible to hold the mirror to themselves if they are not getting to that point where they are aware actually that what they're doing is doing more harm than good.
Thank you. Thanks, Hlengiwe. Thanks, my sister. We'll give Usisi Nyami to assist us with these questions and comments, and then we'll go back to Dr. Sfiso Ngobo. We'll be followed by Mazwe Mandindi, and then Usisi Tanti after Vusi. Sis Nyami, over to you, my sister.
Thank you very much, Prof. The first comment, it was really a comment. I'm just going to respond to it and just really echo what Dr. Mvusi was saying around finding and embracing our authentic self and our authentic voice. I think as individuals, we have to really invest in finding our authentic self. Who am I really? And finding your authentic voice, so that you're not moved by some of these noises. You're also not moved by the different fashions, the waves that go along. The next one was Patiswa and Hlengiwe, the humility versus confidence. I know it's a big paradox, especially in the corporate world, where confidence is defined as that arrogant air, that know-it-all air, then that's confidence. And humility is dialed down as a weak leadership trait. So it's a continuous balance that we have to strike, and over time, you find your own balance in how you navigate certain circumstances. Certain circumstances just require you to be humble, period. And just allow yourself to be in that place of being led rather than stepping forward. And other instances require you to step up and to be able to lead the team. So, and I don't see them as, actually, they're not even mutually exclusive. They're not even mutually exclusive. It's just that the way it's been portrayed, the way it gets dealt with, seems like a paradox, and it actually is not. They're complementary traits and attributes. the other part that Patiswa mentioned is around on the authentic self. And I really would suggest and recommend one of the books that is very good. It's Character Strengths. Unfortunately, I didn't pick up this call from my study, so I don't have the full details with the author and so on. So what I'll do is to send that information to you, Prof. Mazwe. What the Character Strengths book that I'm talking about do is to actually bring in those character traits that you have. For instance, it will take something like curiosity. Curiosity can be good because it gives you the motivation to learn, but over curiosity in the negative, it works as being nosy. You know, uba unondaba nje ufuna yonke into, you want to know everything. So, and yet in the positive, it works around that willingness to learn, that analysis, digging deeper to find solutions. So what I like about that book is it gives you suggested ways to bring certain character strengths, not a weakness. We have some inherent character strengths. You may be kind, but that kindness, in some ways, you have to work on it in a way that it doesn't create, it's not destructive within a leadership context where everyone who's running short of transport money, you're pitching in. You have to know how to draw the line and not let your kindness get in the way. So I'll recommend, I'll send the details of that particular book to Prof. Mazwe. And the way we dealt with it in another setting is we did it in a group. And it was beautiful because you can see the growth in the different areas where people were too strong in one area, and then it works in the negative in a group context. As an authentic being, it may be good, but in a group context, it creates a certain dynamic which is not constructive. So, I think those things, those balances can be achieved with further development like that. So I'll send the information to Prof. Mazwe and you can access it from him. But your point you've raised is really quite, it's on point, really. Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Sis Nyami. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to close, but we'll allow the following colleagues to engage us. Dr. Sfiso Ngobo will be followed by Brother Mazwe Mandindi, and then followed by Usis Tanti. And then after that, we'll take it back to Sis Nyami. And then after that, Sis Nyami will also ask her to give us her closing remarks. But let's take these ones, colleagues first. Mapoloba, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Prof. Majola. Sis Nyami, thank you very much. And yeah, yeah, one will be a comment maybe for me in terms of, I normally use, as a leader of a church, I use a slogan or a theme that says our growth is intentional. Meaning when you say our growth is intentional, you go out to make people comfortable to come to the pulpit, making announcements, you start them from there. Now, in the South African context, you look at countries like Estonia and actually Australia. Estonia has a female president, female prime minister, and about 60% female cabinet. And also the majority of the cabinet, they are under 50. youngest being 39, but they're under 50, the president being 48, the prime minister being 46. I think in the past few weeks, Kim also mentioned something that obviously we have here. Kim Hela mentioned that we have a vacuum in terms of leadership. Now, where we stand currently, we know that we're not going into it where they're saying, maybe your comment in saying that now, the current leadership context in the political space where they say there is no suitable candidate to replace the current president. Is it an insult to the people of South Africa, or is mere political, the word that I'll use, political takeover to ensure that no one must emerge to compete with you? I think your take around that, you know. And then lastly, the current South Africa ambassador to the UN, obviously she's a strong woman, Nonto, but you feel with the current phase of Russia and Ukraine, you could hear from her speech that she might hold a different view, but because she's put into the position to represent the country, you know. Now, as a leader, at what point do you have to ensure that something that you feel strong about also emerges more stronger? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And then Vosumzi. Still with us, Vosi?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Nyami. Good evening, Prof. Everybody else. I'm the eldest brother of Nyami. Rural Eastern Cape. You know, the speech I just want to comment. Kangangoba ngendlela inspired ngayo. Because South Africa has got 11 official languages, but we stick to English. So it's a very lucky language. There are 11 official languages that we have to speak. I think I like the comparison that Nyami is making about what if from 1994, where we had collectively put our resources and go forward, where would we be right now? You know, I take pride because I grew up in rural areas plus in urban areas. So my development is a mixed one. I admired our forefathers who used to do things for themselves. They would plant wheat, they would plant maize, they would grow cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and everything. And they were self-sufficient. There was no grant, mind you, no grant at all. But now, currently, people have got grant, monthly grant, but they can't move. The rural areas have no roads at all. I don't know what happens to the budget for the rural areas, because I was in Port St. John's over this weekend. It's horrible. Their roads are horrible in the rural areas. I was at home, Whittlesea, Queenstown area. The roads are horrible. But every year there is a budget. It's not monitored. I don't know what is happening. So I just want to say her speech has inspired me that I will have to go straight to those guys and engage them somehow. Really, we have to, there was a saying during the years of apartheid in Ciskei. I was working in the Ciskei homeland, that you cannot bite the hand that feeds you. It means they were sort of preventing you from saying any ideas that would change what they were doing. I think the time has come now. I don't think it's too late to start from 1994. The current leadership now must say, look, guys, it won't happen now under our nose. It's not going to happen. We are going to monitor it. We're going to talk about it until they are tired. We can move on and change, firstly, the rural area setup. It's horrible. The roads shouldn't be like that. How would you, those people sometimes, if they get ill, it's easy not to survive, because to take them from where they are on such roads, and when a person is so sick, when will they reach the place of assistance? So I'm highly inspired by my sister. I'm inspired by the leadership of Prof. Mazwe Majola. A rare name, I thought it was Mazwe, because at home we've got Mr. Mazwe, we've got Mazwe, somebody. So it's Mazwe Majola, which means it's combining all nations. I'm inspired by young doctors that are there. Let's doctor the situation, guys, now. We have to look at our situations and apply our knowledge for the survival of all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. We can do it. We can do it. We'll take Usis Tanti, and then after that, we'll go back to Usis Nyami to respond and also to give us a parting shots. Then we'll close the session. Sis Tanti, over to you, sis.
Thank you very much, Prof. You know what I'm finding curious, Sis Nyami and Prof and every person on the line, is that it seems like it's becoming fashionable for corporates to talk about the wellness of their people. And yet, as leaders, we are not deliberately and consistently creating environments that are psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And we're not doing that in a space and time where emotional and mental health problems abound. And we are too eager, seemingly, to cut the check to pay for people who are not healthy so that they can get healthy, instead of consciously ensuring that we keep the healthy healthy. So that's just the one point around this whole leadership thing, you know. The second point is, you know, when we talked previously, a lot of people raised the issue around authentic leaders and leadership. Part of what I think needs to happen, Sis Nyami, Prof, is, yes, show up as yourself, because you can only be yourself. However, I do believe that organizations have a responsibility to define their leadership DNA, and therefore promote and engage leaders based on, you know, where they fare in terms of the DNA. Some things are trainable, some are not trainable. So when I am deficient because there's something there, there's a skill that I need to be trained off, then that's fine. And you can promote me on potential, because you can, you know, training or anything. But if what I lack is not a technical skill and it's not trainable, and you've tried as an organization, then probably we should have the goal as organizations not to promote people and not to make them leaders, and keep them where they are, or get them out of the organizations, and keep the environment clean and safe for people. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sis Tanti. Thank you very much. Sis Nyami, you may respond to my sister, and then also after that you can give us your parting shots, and then I'll close the session after you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. A lot of rich insights have come through there. I really thank everyone, because, you know, we're learning together. I suppose we're building each other up. You know, as iron sharpens iron, so we are, as we talk about these issues. So thanks so much, Dr. Ngobo. The growth has to be intentional. And you know, the most difficult growth is self-work. When we do that introspective, the growth that we need to do is the growth we run away from, you find it's easier to make a decision to go do an MBA, difficult as it is, than get development that begins to confront our ghosts. So, so we don't want to do that hard work of looking inside and saying, maybe, just maybe, I'm the problem here, and begin to deal with those impediments and character traits that are sabotaging our greatness and our success. So I really like that slogan. I might just steal it, that growth is intentional. It has to be intentional. And I suppose that's why we're in this platform together, because we're busy creating spaces for growth. And so this is really great. The other thing you were talking about, I think you were framing, is around political posturing with regards to the leadership vacuum. And it is quite an interesting one, because I don't believe South Africa is running short of leadership. I really don't. I'm actually not convinced that we have a leadership shortage in this nation. It's just that we have made a habit. There was a time when there was a conscious silencing of professionals and academics, especially Black. And again, along the same philosophy that my brother was talking about, that you cannot bite the hand that feeds you. So we've created a narrative that believes that for Black people to survive in the business environment or within the economy, they have to put themselves in that little corner of trading with government only. And then whites must trade with the private sector and everybody's happy. So that's why then we got muted and our voices couldn't be heard with regards to certain things. Same happens, in fact, with regards to challenging the private sector, and really, because the behaviors that we see in government actually are the same as what we see in private sector. Make no mistake, the rotten egg here is not on one side. We've got a problem across the board. If you look at the biggest corporate scandals that we had in the last 5 years, and you look at the underlying issues in those corporate scandals, it's really this lack of ethics, you know, where companies are not, and organizations across the board, even our country as generally, people are not afraid to hang the values board at the entrance at reception. And you see there that the value is integrity, the value is fairness. And then Steinhoff goes off and does something that you're like, what part of integrity don't you understand? What does it mean when you walk in that door and see that board, you know, displaying those words? Are they mere words? That's why then we need to make that journey between and connect the heart to the mind. Because if you process these things from a mind level, a mental level, you know, an intellectual cognitive level, and not connect them to the heart in as far as it affects the way you feel about things, the way you behave, and the way you translate the culture of the organization, they remain mere words. And therefore there's no integrity in the system. And therefore the wide-scale abuse of resources and people happens, it gets fertile ground. So in a nutshell, Dr. Ngobo, there's no leadership vacuum in our country. Let's create a fair system where leaders emerge. Let's create the fertile environment, an enabling environment that, that causes eagles to fly. Let the people who are supposed to thrive, you know, and you can only do that by creating an environment that goes for innovation, that goes for excellence across the board, that goes for the aspiration to achieve academically and so on. You just create an environment, and that's a leadership responsibility, to create an environment. And once you've created an environment, people slot themselves in their rightful positions and thrive in those spaces. So, I think it's maybe they do have a leadership problem within the ANC. I don't know. I'm not here to do a political commentary, but we can't juxtapose the organizational challenge as a national challenge. It's not. There's two disparate aspects to that challenge. So I'll stop it there. And then on the matter of accommodating an individual voice in the context of a group position, it's also a very tricky leadership thing, a leadership challenge that sometimes you get faced with. And I suppose, Tanti, also it touches on what you were mentioning, because sometimes organizations have certain positions they adopt. And in terms of collective leadership, you are bound by the collective. When you voted on a decision, if the collective has raised a matter, then as part of that organization or that collective, then you are bound by the decisions that get made. So I think in instances like that, where you feel strongly, I mean, there are instances where there were good opportunities, but because I couldn't resonate with the value system of that particular organization or particular organizations, then you gently turn down the offer because I knew I can't finish a month. You know, something is gonna give. It's either my soul will be for sale, or you know, or there's major conflicts in the system. So sometimes there are times when you join organizations to be a change agent, but there are times where the culture is so entrenched and it's so totally different to who you are as a person, as your authentic self, that if you were to conform to that culture, you definitely would be selling yourself out or representing something that is not your authentic self. So, you know, those things are individual decisions, I suppose, as to how does someone respond to situations like that. But I mean, if you're representing a nation on foreign land, I don't think it's you can come with a contrary opinion. Otherwise, if every other ambassador would come with a contrary voice, then the respect and the voice of the nation gets confused. So I think there's a value system that is involved there. And then Tanti, on the wellness and the creation of the toxic environment, especially now, it really, that's why we need the heart as leadership, because people have been through, especially now, a hard 2 years. The time we've been through with COVID and the lockdowns has been brutal to individuals. And I don't even think organizations have begun to create a platform and an environment where people can even begin to talk about it. Some people lost complete families and they couldn't even go back home to bury those families or get the necessary support or the support they would have had those instances happened at easier times. So the issue of mental problems and depressions in the workplace, over and above the toxicity that gets created by the bully behaviors, by the dominating behaviors, and especially now in organization, this immorality of prioritizing, almost like a catch-up. We lost, you know, profitability. We lost our profits in 2020. Therefore, let's quickly catch up now in 2021, 2022. We lay off 20% of the workforce, and yet we want to raise our profitability by 20%. So those people are overworked. Not only are they adjusting back to an emotional trauma, they're also overworked. So it's going to be a very difficult one. And I think what it does, actually I've been writing something about repositioning the role of the Social and Ethics Committee within boards, the importance, because having talked about all the things we've talked about here, these are social in nature. And if you look at board importance, the importance is sitting with the audit committee, and most of the conversation and the discussion in the board revolve around that. Not that there's anything wrong, we're in business to make money, make no mistake. But where's the heart? Where's the value system? Where's the humanity in our process of profiteering? So I think we're gonna need to begin to bring in that awareness on the balance, because people are really operating on autopilot. Engaging Institute of Directors with regards to some of these issues, but also conscientizing and raising the profile and the voice of the HR executives in organizations in a way that they're not just a support function, they are a critical enabler of the success and prosperity of the business. So it's going to be very important that we raise those profiles, we give them voice, and we act on their voice, such that if we see that there is a widespread lack of wellness and people are not doing well on the balance, then HR can be able to have the power and the influence to structure mechanisms or intervention mechanisms in that regard. So I think, Dante, it's a broader conversation because it needs to be approached at different levels. It needs to be approached, on a multifaceted and multidisciplinary way that enhances the success of the business, but also creates a platform for people to thrive in the workplace. We need to also understand that the toxicity that has been in the workplace, that has been promoted and almost tolerated, it also impacts on the wellness and also the well-being of the society generally, because that stressed man goes to their home. They become a shut-off husband because for the last 9 hours, they've been bullied and they couldn't raise their voice because they don't want to be the first one on the retrenchment list. So all those matters really affect how then a society begins to function. So we need to take that conversation further and really raise the awareness that it needs to be dealt with. It needs to really have an integrated and a coordinated solution to that. Yeah, I think I've covered all the questions and I hope I have done so. Dante, I may have missed 1 or 2 of your points, but I thought they're more comments than questions. But on the overall, my closing remarks would be that I don't believe that we don't have the power. I don't believe that we cannot make a difference. We have the ability to chip in our spheres of influence and begin to create an environment for people to thrive and for leaders to emerge. But we have to influence our own spaces first and begin to like what my brother was saying, that he's gonna go back to his area of influence and begin to facilitate change in that space. and all of us have some sphere of influence, even if it's a small community, we begin to bring change in that space. I mean, now we were talking with another friend about what has befallen Black executives across the board in many ways, people who have been victimized and, you know, both in the public sector space and in the private sector space. And we're beginning to create coaching circles to talk about the pain, to talk about the disappointment, to begin to bring sanity to each other so that people can begin to reimagine, to re-envision their futures. So we have the power and we need to use the little power that we have. And secondly, my parting shot would be that as a nation, we have so much potential. We must never fall into this place of accepting second rate, accepting the little bit. You know, the other day, I found myself so shocked by, I called a service provider, and he called back, and he was so warm and keen to have my business and so keen to help in whatever I was seeking. And I found myself thanking him. Oh my goodness, thank you for your great service. And I'm thinking, we have got so used to bad service. We have got so accepting to a situation where we don't hold each other, we don't call each other to account, that when someone does the right thing, it's a surprise, whereas it should be the normal thing, it should be the normal standard. So as a nation, we need to begin to be more vocal, to be more visible in calling for accountability. And when I'm saying more vocal and more visible, I think the weapon of toy-toying had its time and its season and probably won us certain wars. But I think now we need to engage the warfare differently. You know, if I were to borrow from Dr. Ngobo, from the Bible, you see when the Israelites move, the leadership of Moses versus the leadership of Joshua was different because there was a different warfare and a different season we enter into. So I think also as a people, we have to be very conscious that we're entering or have entered a new season where we have to fight an intellectual warfare and begin to use our minds, use our skills, use our talents to impact, rather than use the noise to change the dynamic in our nation. And in that way, we're able to find each other across the diversity of our nation who have a similar vision for our nation. And collectively, we can make a huge difference and prosper our nation greatly. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you for the time. Thank you all for your engagement. I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Wow, well, thank you. Thanks, my sister. We've learned a lot from you tonight. Thanks so much for availing yourself. I know that we are a very busy person, but just to take a time and say, come and empower us. You know, there's so, I mean, the nuggets that you've really left us with, we're going to discuss them. We'll workshop them, and they will assist really to redefine a kind of leadership that we need, a leadership from the heart. So thank you so much for your humility, and thank you so much for always being there. You know, as you can see that we love you, and then we learn a lot from you. And thank you so much to you, ladies and gentlemen who attended tonight. As you can see, I did say earlier on, this is the community of leaders. Everyone who's here is a leader. We've got board members here, you've got executives, you've got great leaders from all walks of life, people who just come and just listen to other people. And I always say that the majority of people here, the 90% are our past speakers or our past panelists, but they're humble enough to come back and listen to other people. So please do come back again. And next week, we are meeting again. As I said, that we meet every Wednesdays. And you won't regret when you come. Even next week, you've got another powerful speaker and another very important topic that we'll be discussing. So thank you so much to all of you. To those who are here for the first time, please do join us again next week. Same details, same Zoom details that we use to log in, and then we are here again next week at 6 p.m. We have a Facebook page. It's called the Leadership Think Tank. That's where we really continue the leadership discussions, because obviously here it's just a Zoom. We cannot deal with everything here. So please do join that that Facebook, and you are more than welcome to empower us there as well, to post any leadership related materials or comments or anything. It's for that, actually. I mean, anyone who can just, I mean, as long as you're a member, you can just write about any leadership issue there. It's called the Leadership Think Tank. It's a Facebook page. Other than that, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We've been empowered, we have been encouraged, we have been inspired, and we are so full of wisdom that we'll use for the rest of our life. Till we meet again next week, this session is adjourned now. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.